Kevin, you want to kick this off?
Let's kick it off, Ty. I'm ready when you are. You ready?
All right.
Timeout, Tyler. That was a great whistle, but who the heck are we sitting down with today?
Kevin, what's going on up there in the 585, my man? We got Sam Leone, ladies and gentlemen, the president at Conifer Realty. Sam, thanks for kicking this off with this, man. I think your guest, like I'd say 94, even though I love that year because that's when my Razorbacks won the national championship. But Sam, man, good to have you on Timeout with Leaders. We understand that you're in Jersey today. You're planted up there where Kevin is in the Rochester area as well. And Sam, I just want to start by saying, have you ever been to Sonny's Barbecue?
I've been to Sonny's. Yeah.
How does that compare with the BBQ up there in New Jersey?
I actually like Dinosaur Barbecue up in Rochester. Yeah. So
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Home job.
And now that we're recording, Sam, so you kind of elaborated, you were a Gator down there in Gainesville. And can you kind of take us through a few fun experiences you had in Florida in college?
So I grew up in a small town, South Jersey. My high school was all of my graduating class was 175 kids. It was a rural community in South Jersey. Believe it or not, there are still rural places in South Jersey.
I was going to say, Jersey has rural areas.
There is, yeah. So the first thing that happened when I went to Gainesville was this. I think even back then there was like 40,000 kids, right? And some of the classes, those entry level classes, they're and I tell you what, when they say I remember sitting in the big auditorium in orientation, and they were like, look to the left, look to the right. At the end of the year, one of those people isn't going to be here anymore. And so then the first thing that happened was I'm in these 800 person lecture halls for and I was foolish enough to test into advanced chemistry. I wanted to be an engineering student back then. So I'm in advanced chem, advanced calc, and there's 800 kids. And what did I get myself into? I remember being my average class was 30 kids, all through rural high school. So, but yeah, it was full blast, awesome people, great school. It was really fun being part of the SEC, sports program and all the energy that comes with it. Went to a lot of Gator growls down there. A lot of great football games, and I've got a set of friends that are still with me, that I'm still connected with. It was a really fun time to be in Gainesville.
Did you go to class, Sam? Amazing. All right, so we're going to the tailgate. It's a big rivalry week. I'm a Kentucky basketball fan, so Tyler, you're welcome for John Calipari and all these nice recruits, and all these nice recruits that you're now getting from us. You're welcome, but. We're getting ready for a big football game. I know Kentucky and Florida kind of got a big rivalry when it comes to basketball and football now. But what song would we listen to on our way over to the stadium?
Oh man, gosh, you're taking me back now. I'm going to go with, this might have been toward the end there, but I'm going to say Montel Jordan. This is how we do it.
Love it.
Oh man,
that's a good one. This is how we do it.
Well, Sam, this is going to be fun, man. And we'll get a few other fun little questions out of the way here. And we always like to ask people, if we're driving on 590, 390, 490, whatever the 90 you're on, and Sam Leone gets to put a billboard up for every Rochesterian to see and take with them to work. What's that billboard saying?
Man, what's the billboard say? I'm just really over the top proud of our team at Conifer. I've been here for the majority of my career, and I mentioned earlier I enjoy coming in on Mondays, and that's the absolute truth. And it's because of the team here and what we do. I think it would just say, we have a new slogan here at Conifer. Count on us. I think it would just have to say, something like, count on Conifer, or Conifer count on us. I don't know, man. You caught me off guard.
right.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a little different flavor of a question. If there was a quote that you could put on a bumper sticker or a slogan or a phrase to maybe tell us a little bit more about the man that you are, Sam, and have people get to know you a little bit. What's that quote? What are some words that move you, to inspire you, to get motivated for a Monday morning?
Yeah. I like the word grit. I think grit's just something that certainly I feel like has been a big part of my success, is that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to be the strongest person in the room. You really just need to be committed to what you're doing and have the follow through. Sometimes just when you think you're just not going to get there, literally you're, 1 yard from the finish line and just don't know it. A lot of my career has been defined by grit, just continuing to push through. So maybe it would just be grit.
I think hearing you, it seems like you've had coming from a small town, you've always been fighting up a weight class almost, and it feels like that. I'm from Elmira myself, and coming up to Rochester, this was a big city, comparatively to where I came from, and nothing was ever handed to me, and it sounds like nothing ever was really handed to you, Sam, and you really had to earn what you had. But how did you get yourself comfortable with not needing to be the smartest or the strongest in the room? Given your role today, right, it's almost that old dogma that the CEO knew everything, right? There was no question that the CEO didn't have an answer for. You guys are fearless, right? There aren't things that keep you up at night. You're untouchable almost, as some other people see you. But you coming out of the gate saying that I'm not going to be the strongest or the smartest in the room. How did you get yourself comfortable with that?
I think part of it, when I was younger, in my career, I remember people saying, hey, you've got some real collaboration skills. You've got some great people skills. I think that definitely was a good start. And I can't really speak to how I developed those, other than just that I've got a really awesome family structure around me, so I think just coming from that background, feeling comfortable, talking with people and sharing ideas with people and asking people for help, kind of came natural, if anything. But from there, I just developed a good understanding of what questions to ask. And I really try to coach all of our team here to do the same. I spent most of my career here in the development world, and I went from, a mixed background of economic development, construction, and a whole bunch of other things, to suddenly being here at Conifer, being trusted to develop $20 million communities. And that's in 2007 dollars. They're $45 million now. And I had a little bit of construction knowledge. I had some good common sense. And I understand how to run numbers, and I've got a financial background, but what really got me through it was just understanding, how to ask good questions from the development team, the construction team, to kind of validate, how things are going. And I think with that, you start to really, with that and developing a good sense for what's really going on in people's mind when they're answering the questions, you just start to, so I really, it's hard for me to kind of say how much of that is just personal traits innate with me versus things I've learned, but that's really how I put it together. And that's how I really try to coach my team to put it together.
I think even your mindset, just a couple of things is, like you said, coach. I don't know a lot of CEOs that call themselves a coach, and that's how I've always viewed it, is how can I help enable, empower, encourage somebody else's success? We'll call that leadership, but that's just the daily intention. I want them to ultimately lead the best lives that they can. They just don't have all the tools yet. But I also heard you say entrusting those closest to the problems by asking really good questions and pretending like we don't already know, right? And then that it's like almost like the Undercover Boss show. I always refer to that show. It's like you're willing to put yourselves on the front line in order to actually understand and gain that perspective necessary to make decisions and choices when it comes to strategy or change. And that is different, right? There's a lot of people that pay a lot of consultants, right, that you must be really good, right? You know our business outside of our business, instead of trusting the valuable human capital that's internally, that's been there for 30 years. You know, they've seen it. They can tell you where improvements need to be made, and ultimately they want to be most efficient with their time too. So they're always adding value. So just a few things that you just said there, Sam, that really resonate with myself, and kind of my whole approach is that a lot of the answers to our questions and problems are already in the mix of who we're already gainfully employing today.
Yeah, and it breaks down barriers, right? I mean, it breaks down barriers, and I think it builds a sense of commitment and dedication.
Couldn't agree more.
If I pull up on a job site even now, and rather than saying, hey, why aren't you doing this, or where's this at, or when are you going to have XYZ done, if I'm just asking, starting with just, hey, how's it going out here, what are you up against, what are the things that you're concerned about as far as your schedule on the job, just, I think it really shows that I want to know what they think, right, and that I value that. And I think that also helps make sure, the biggest fear that someone like me, I think, could always have is that fear that things might not be going as well as they should be, and that people are afraid to tell me so, right? So I think it just really builds that Sam really just wants to know what's going on, and if I tell him it's not so good, he's not going to flip out or lose his cool. He's going to say, well, how do we fix it then, right? And so that's really important to have that, no matter how stressful it is. It's really important to carry that, so that people do feel confident to, again, back to that biggest fear. I think that's the biggest fear certainly that I know of, that any fear that any leader would have is this. I mean, we've got over 500 really dedicated people here at Conifer. I can't be worried that any one of those individuals is afraid to speak up and say that they don't have the tools to be successful. So
and I love you looking to arm them with the tools in order to be successful. You see it as an investment, that just like you do in a property. If you give them the tools and you give them the space and you give them the opportunity, that asset should grow in value over time, right? And I think it's different, right? And I love the difference of questions that you just had. One was, those are like almost accusing them of doing something wrong, when we're asking, like, where's this project at, or where do we stand on this, instead of you trying to identify the barriers that are impeding their performance. So I just love it. Ty, what do you got? I could talk all day to Sam right now.
Yeah, this is easy, man. This is easy, Sam. Thanks for being on, man. And we like we were mentioned, we've had a ton of guests on this show, and they all have a commonality, it seems like, with everyone has this grit and this like inner fire in them, right? At this president, CEO level that we talk with. And we find often that there's a challenge between like having all that grit and fire and the balance of being in the weeds and not. Do you have a challenge? Like, so me and Kevin have it too, man. I want to be on everything, and I can't help it, man. When I go to bed at night, I always tell Kevin, I'm like, dude, I can teach my 1-year-old daughter things. I'm sure this 30-year-old can do what I'm asking them to do, right? Do you have any challenges, like stepping back, even with all your experience still?
Definitely do. Yeah. I think it would be, I think I'd be afraid if I didn't, right? It'd be like, well, and sometimes I can rely on my own self-awareness to say, hey, I need to take a step back, and I can be helpful here. And so in those moments, I actually had that happen at 7:30 this morning. I was talking to a team member, and he's a great guy on our team, one of our VPs in New Jersey, doing a great development deal. I spent most of my life developing in New Jersey, so it's easy for me to start saying, well, hey, I can call, or I can do, but instead I just said, hey, I can be helpful, just if you need me if you want to bounce something off of me, I'm here. I'm not always that good at that. So there are times that other people on the team have to kind of call me out and say, hey, Sam, you're kind of going down a rabbit hole. Barb has an Elmo doll, so there's it's like, I call Elmo, you're going down in the
Yeah. And Sam, where do you continue to, fan your flame, like with keeping this fire? I think a lot of leaders, they feel like they always have to look like they're, their energy's up, right? And how do you keep that up?
Fortunately, a lot of it's natural for me. I mean, I really truly believe in what we do here. I've seen us do um, amazing things with the people that are here, and so it's kind of more of my natural style to be more upbeat and positive, to look more towards how do we get through this, um, and I usually tend to be looking past that problem, to what Conifer is going to look like when we're the first people to get through that issue, right? There's a lot of industry challenges we're faced with right now, and they can be pretty daunting, and they're stressful. Um, but my mind tends to go to, okay, we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this and get stronger, and we're going to come out of this faster than our competitors will. So that's kind of a natural mindset for me. Um, but I have had to get very used to just thinking through what my facial expressions might be. You know, um, I went from having a team of 5 or 6 people to having a team of 20 or 30 people to now having, over 500 people here. If I'm doing a town hall, or if I'm at a site or visiting a property, I have had to really recognize that I need to pay attention to my facial expressions, because it could be something as silly as that, I had a lousy breakfast, or my kids needed me that morning or something. And then I show up and I'm carrying that, and they might think that it's something that I'm upset with as far as work.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
That's really, really cool. I mean, I go back to what you said about I believe in what we do. That's that motivational force. That's your daily intention to listen. I think, but I love, and I think Tyler, when we call out themes and commonality, I think that's one of the biggest ones that we haven't talked about before. But do we look at problems and challenges as barriers, or do we look at them as opportunities? And I think that's how we, all three of us, are, frankly. Looking at a challenge as an opportunity. Somebody sees a mountain and we see an anthill. It's like, oh yeah, have we thought about it this way? Have we included this perspective, or have we talked to these individuals? But I know what you mean, Sam. Like, sometimes, to Tyler's point earlier about getting into the weeds, sometimes us helpers, right, we overhelp, right? And sometimes we limit the own development of those people below us because we want to help so much. So that's a lesson that I've had to learn, is like back up, delegate more, because that's the greatest form of empowerment today, is let them fail, right? But create a safe space that allows them to fail and learn from that experience, because behind 10 failures, there's one massive success and innovation that's just waiting to be found.
Definitely. Yeah, we've got a fail forward philosophy here. That's literally what we call it. Back to that is just like, and obviously you have to have some bumper guards or boundaries around that. Like, we're not talking about, fail forward like, hey, I just lost $1 million, but it's okay, I learned something, but
Yeah.
hey, we just be mindful that there's a million things that, if I were to play back my own tape, it's easy to remember all the great decisions I made, but there were a lot of bad ones along the way too. And that becomes your experience that makes you stronger, right? So we have to allow our team to have those same reps and build their own strength. Yeah.
I was just saying, I love talking to a leader that really can map out some failures, man, and they can laugh about them. Kevin and I always talk about, like, the destination is kind of like underwhelming sometimes. It's kind of like, what did we mess up on the way? And when I'm talking to people on their mess ups, as many mess ups as they had, it made them a genius in their field in a way, just because they haven't done that or whatnot. And a lot of people we talk to challenge themselves outside of work. I've recognized. Do you challenge yourself outside of work in any specific area?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of in my nature that no matter what I do, I find myself wanting to do it better. I can't help it. So
I'm a recovering perfectionist too, Sam.
Yeah. So I'm still an avid skier. I've been skiing since I was 3 years old. It's something that we did as a family, and now I ski with my kids, and I ski with my brother, my sister, and some friends. And I just turned 50, and I got to tell you, somebody on the ski slope last year, happened to be skiing by, and he was like, hey, I'm getting up to your age, and just be careful, like, when you break bones at our age. And I'm like, look, I don't want to hear that, but like, I'm still out there skiing as if I was 25. I can't help it, and so yeah, I definitely bring, and I like running. I've kind of gotten away from it the past year or so, just with workload and stuff. But kind of the same thing. I started doing some 5Ks, and then I'm like, well, let me do a marathon. I just, there's part of that inside of me that just wants to keep trying to up the ante and see what I can do. So.
Isn't it like amazing when you do that? I've been on a little running kick, like when I'm on like my second or third mile, and then I get back to the office. I'm like, this stuff is easy, compared to hoofing, man. And I think that's where it really helps me. Like, just something very challenging during the day that is nowhere near what I'm doing in work. For some reason, makes me better at work. It makes it more, I don't know, just a little more simplistic. I don't know. I just try to, make the time for it. And
you talked about your own self. You talked about your own self-awareness, and I think that's another common theme that we see from separating good leaders from great, right? Because I think you're hungry for feedback, right? When you're self-aware, you're admitting your weaknesses and identifying your strengths, but obviously opportunity to always grow. You mentioned rolling back the tape. On your experiences, right, that feed into your knowledge and your wisdom. How often are you reflecting? Like, as a CEO, is that a best practice that you found to do it within the day, within the week, within the month? I mean, the world of business and economics is changing by the second, it feels like today. So how often are you playing back that tape, Sam?
Yeah, I think that I'm doing at least every Saturday, if that makes sense. I think Saturday's become a good time for me to kind of, Saturday morning, especially now that I'm sort of an empty nester. My 22-year-old daughter still lives with us, but it's not like we have to worry about making breakfast for her or something. But
she's on her own for that.
But yeah, Saturday morning is just a good time to just kind of think, hey, how'd the week go? And is there some things that I need to make sure I follow up on Monday? Is there something that is a reaction I had that I kind of regret and I want to work on or whatever? I think it's just a good downtime. And then, during the week, the good thing is I do have, so you mentioned coaching. I've got, we have a coach here at Conifer that works with us with the senior team here. And I think that's really helpful because it's a more structured, systematic approach of for me and the other key leaders here. And then I also have just a personal coach that I work with. So I invest a lot of time in it. And sometimes it's like, man, I have other things to do today, but spending, an hour with that coach just really gets your mindset right. And it's a safe place to kind of just throw whatever's out there, and bounce ideas off of somebody. So.
Absolutely. And I think I love that check-in with yourself, and I feel like a lot of us are just going through the motions. We get through the week, we exhale over the weekend, and we take the next 2 days to recoup and then march and muster up the courage to go in on Monday morning. I feel like we're just going through the motions, and my cycle really wasn't broken until the pandemic. I mean, it took a global pandemic for Kevin to get off that hamster wheel and finally start to like, well, yeah, where am I? Exactly.
Yeah.
Is this ultimately what I want? Where do I want to get better? Where can improvements be made? And it sounds like you've identified, like, in real time, right? It sounds like you're almost planning out the next week forward. Like, I hated how I did that. I think I could do that better. And it seems like that's everybody needs accountability partners, right? Until we voice it, nobody else knows what our really goals or intention or vision really ultimately is. Therefore, we hold those secrets closest to our chest and tell no one, because then no one can hold us accountable if we fail or succeed, So that's, I always see the value in coaching, bouncing things off of people. And you hear that from a lot of CEOs, Sam, is like they feel like they can't go internally and ask for help, but I don't hear that in your voice, right? You have no problem admitting what you know and don't know. But then be willing to ask for help, I think, is one of the most courageous things a leader can do, being vulnerable. Have you found your being vulnerable, like really allows to build that high trust culture that now you're getting that feedback where people want to give you that honest feedback? How have you helped build or strengthen the trust within Conifer today?
I definitely think it does. I think that like it's a really hard thing to measure, obviously, but I do think we have a very solid culture here, at least comparatively to the industry. And that I do think that, hey, what do I really want people to think, each day coming in? If they happen to think of me, or the leadership team, it's that we're here for them, right? And that, that we understand that we've all got a lot of challenges each day, but we're committed towards a common cause, and we're committed towards a unified set of goals, and that if something's getting off track, that we're going to work together to fix it, right? So I think it's just, but that takes a lot of repetition, and frankly, it's just like the saying about reputation. You can spend 20 years doing that, and it takes 5 minutes to screw it up. So I think just being really mindful that that not just me, but the whole executive team, we've got to live by that, because all it takes is one time, just kind of just missing the mark, and it takes a long time to recover from that. So
I love how you're like reverse engineering it, though. You're like going back to what you said. It's like, I'm really thinking about how they're coming in and then how they're leaving the organization, right? The people that you employ, those 500 individuals. I think when we start with that end in mind, or think about the legacy, right? Just as a leader, one of this exercises that I did the other day, which I found fascinating, was writing your own obituary, right? What do you want to be remembered for? What do you want to be remembered by? And just going through that exercise is really powerful, because you can start to identify, hey, you know what? I want to be this, but I'm not this, right? And then finding those people, like you said, the 5 other people, you're the sum of 5. But finding those 5 people, I've found that the people that I'm closest with are willing to give me that honest feedback, to expel that energy, to give me their honest feedback, in an effort to become the best version of myself. But it's rare, I found, right? You mentioned your relationship with Barb being your right hand man or woman, right, on your executive team. That feedback is like such gold, but so few people are willing to ultimately give it because of that safety or fear factor. But it sounds like that's something that you've really fostered internally, and has only made you better, and made the organization better as a whole.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, you can say so much of life, you can say, is just luck, right? Like I feel very lucky that I get the chance to work with people like Barb, and a whole lot of other people similar to Barb, that carry a lot of Barb's similar traits here at Conifer. But it's kind of what you do with that afterwards. And I can say, Barb and I have been through a lot here. We've running a large organization, especially running a large organization like ours through COVID and post-COVID, and reopening our properties back to human interaction. And then there's just been some challenges that we've dealt with at our properties, including, that we went through a series of eviction moratoriums. So there were a lot of residents that weren't paying rent, and then had to kind of start back up paying. There's been a lot of things we've had to work through as a company the past 3 years that arguably have been some of the most. We've worked through some of those challenges before, but I can say in my 20 years in this industry, it's the first time that they've all been there all at once.
All the same time. Well, then you got a
rates
resilient ass team right now, Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you've totally, you've been running uphill for the last marathon. So
yeah.
That's really exciting.
It is, yeah, and you know, so it's been a tough time, but those are the times that you really test out whether, you know, it's easy to say, hey, you know, me and the rest of the executive team, you know, we're solid. We got great leadership traits, they're great quality, you know, great candid communication. That's easy to say when things are going well, and but when things aren't going so well, and when you've got some really tough choices to make, and you've got to hold each other accountable, you know, for each person's part in that, that's when the stakes get high. And Barb and I have been through those things, and and the full executive team. You know, we've got an executive team of six. You know, certainly Barb, but also Rob Corradine, our CFO, Stephanie Nichols, who heads up people and culture for us here, Lisa Caseman, who heads up development, and then Jeff Baker, who heads up property management. So the six of us, we've really gotten that rhythm, and we check. By the way, we have weekly calls, we have weekly check-ins, and the first metric for ourselves is leadership health. So and it's been green for several months now, which is awesome. You know, green, yellow, red, and it's been green. But there's been times it's been red. There's been times it's been orange or yellow, and I think for a little while people were like, "Well, maybe we're lime green or something." I don't know. We came up with, but we've been green for a while, and it's amazing because the toughest times are what really make you the strongest, for sure. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love that adversity tests our true abilities, you know, and I think I always say time has a way of showing us who people truly are, what we're truly made of. But yeah, that's where I've grown the most. I think I've grown, to Tyler's earlier point. It's like I've convinced myself that the destination was what I always wanted, but it's the journey in and of itself that's where I've grown the most, and that willingness to come outside that comfort zone.
Yeah, Sam, I gotta ask, what makes green green, man? Like when you have you seen any, like when your team is green, right? What kind of indicates that for your team, for your leadership team, to know that you're green?
I think it's for me, and I think for the rest, a true green, you know, versus like there's I guess what I was getting at. Like sometimes we thought we were green, and then something really difficult comes along, and it's like, wow, maybe we aren't, you know. But true green, which is what I really think we are right now, is just being able to be completely transparent with each other. You know, it's incredibly important. This isn't an autocracy, you know. This isn't, you know, Sam calls the shots at Conifer. This is that's not the right way to run a company this large, certainly, you know, and it's not how I want to see us run Conifer, right? So I need to be able to rely on the other five individuals and our greater Conifer leadership team. We've got, you know, a senior leadership team beyond that, and all of our, frankly, everybody here I consider a leader in their own craft, right? So we need to be able to count on each other and hold each other accountable. So true green to me would be having that comfort level to say, and you know, maybe it's Barb. Maybe I come in one day and I'm like, hey Barb, you know what? I needed this. I've needed this, and we've been talking about it. It's just not happening. What are we gonna do about this, right? Whereas it's so easy to be like, well, you know, I feel awkward asking, or maybe there's something else going on in her world. You know, we have to be able to break through those things and just be really not nasty or mean. You know, it's the opposite of that. It's just really being straightforward with each other. And back to the autocracy thing, you know, that needs to be the safest space, is the six of us, you know, really being able to speak frankly with each other about what's really going on in the company. If we're holding back, or we're trying to play politics, or we're trying to smooth talk our way through something, we're not going to be nearly as good of a company as we could be. So
that's awesome, Sam. I can't imagine how many people
you could say. I wish we could get him to say that again, Ty. Just the explosion of energy on politics and smoothing it over. Frankly, I think without, you know what I mean? Like, so many people are playing pretend and dress up, and everything's rainbows and roses, but it's this fictitious lie that they keep telling the senior leadership team that everything's great, and yeah, I wish more people had that perspective, Sam. Even what he said too about maybe something else is going on. I mean, even for that to enter into your decision making or thought process, we heard emotional intelligence, but that's real emotional intelligence, right? Something else. This is out of the norm. Maybe something else is going on. So those are just the things that came to my mind. Tyler, sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're good, man. I was just thinking about how many times in my life that when I've ran with bad news fast to the leader or non-normal news, how okay it is, and it's almost like you're the hero and you're like, I'm about to say something that is not normal. And it's just taken so different. I think we have this fear built up in us. I mean, we see it all the time. And Sam, I was going to say, I can't imagine how many people look up to you over there, man. And I was going to ask you, who do you look up to?
Wow. I definitely look up to my parents. I lost my mom back in December. And I kind of grew up with my mind kind of racing through a million different things and kind of always wanting to have somebody that could just kind of ground me, and my mom was always that person. I was able to call her and kind of walk through things, and I lost her, but definitely somebody I really looked up to. And definitely, my mom and dad, you just, as life goes on, you realize how the tools they gave you, and Kevin, you mentioned kind of that grit coming up, being the underdog. I definitely view myself that way. It's not like it's not like I went to school at 18 with a pedigree education, seeking out to be a CEO. I found myself here, and I think that's what drives me. But again, back to my parents, I think that's what they instilled in me. Is that just keep going, keep your head up, do the right thing, and that's what led them through their lives. Outside of that, certainly the person here that taught me a lot of what I know and is still there from my perspective, when I needed it, is Tim Fournier. He was the CEO and chairman here at Conifer for a lot of years. He's still on our board. I give a lot of, it's easy to say, well, hey, I've been here a long time and I've been successful because of what I did. But in order for me to do what I did, I needed somebody to believe in me, and Tim did that. He pulled me along with him, and now I want to do that for others. So certainly Tim, a lot of other people. I mean, we've got a board that has a lot of really smart people on it. I certainly look up to them, and then certainly people like Barb. I really, the people skills and the organizational skills that she has, and that she brings to the table. So yeah, I mean, I think, there's a long list. The longer I could go on for a long time. There's a lot of people that I'm fortunate enough to look up to. So.
And maybe it's your Saturday reflection, Sam, but for you to say, like, I think a lot of people get to that point, right, or get to this destination, and I smelled that on you from the beginning, right? The CEO is not something you ever saw in yourself, right, but others saw it in you, and I think that's when we're high performers and we're not even realizing a lot of the things that we are doing that might be different, right? Because it's just like, give me something, let me finish it, let me complete it, I'll learn along the way. And it's just interesting to hear somebody in your stature, right? Because Tyler and I've talked to a lot of CEOs. Some CEOs, they were born on home base, right? And it was all their doing on how they got to that position, right? But here you're realizing, like, there was people along the way, there was information along the way, experiences along the way that allowed me to be the best that I could be in this role, even though I couldn't even see it in myself. And I think that belief factor that you mentioned is so important, because most people are hard on themselves. We're not very compassionate. We're compassionate with others, but not even our own self. Just to hear that, I mean, you're celebrating people's strengths, and other people celebrated your strengths and even let you know what they were. You were good with people. You had collaboration skills. I mean, that's stuff that we're not even seeing that we're doing ultimately because our overall intention is to help and improve and make better. So how did you, I catch myself in this, and I think to Tyler's earlier point, a lot of times we don't give feedback because we're almost assuming the worst outcome, to his point, right? If I share this back to the CEO or my manager, maybe something negative will happen to me. Maybe it will jeopardize my career. Assuming gets me in a lot of trouble because then it's like, maybe I won't have that critical conversation. I'll just let that go, keep the peace, right? It's just easier. I don't have to expel as much energy. How have you caught yourself as a CEO with all that experience, right? All that knowledge, all that wisdom, from assuming less and asking more? Because it seems like something that you've really perfected, that you want all the information before you're making a decision. How did you get yourself comfortable? What are some of your best practices to catch yourself when maybe Sam's assuming something?
Great question. I think some of it is just the experiences of, there have been times that I did assume, right? And then you realize and the consequences of that, including that you can, come to some false conclusions about people and the performance of a team and all those other things, right? Just by having some assumptions rather than facts. So, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, there have been times I've gotten that wrong. There's been times I've gotten that wrong with my family, with my friends, with work, and it's like, man, was I way off base on that? And not only was I off base, but I just spewed out a bunch of crap that I can't take back. And now what, right? So I think sometimes maturity just comes, experience is brutal sometimes, but
experience is brutal. That. That's the bumper sticker. That's the billboard.
That's your bumper sticker. Yes.
Experience.
I think that's a C.S. Lewis
quote. Experience is brutal.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Full disclosure, I think that's C.S. Lewis. I think it's experience, the most brutal teacher. But yeah. So, but I think that the times I've let myself down on that, kind of really kind of shape you into, getting it right and trying to keep your emotions down until you have the facts, drive from a more, fact pattern based decision-making process rather than emotional. But you can't lose the emotional side either. I mean, like in negotiations and other key events, what got me, a lot of things got me to where I'm at, but I do think that being able to read people, especially, when you're trying to negotiate with someone maybe that you've just met for the first time or whatever, so it's a funny kind of thing. Like you need to make, we talk about emotional EQ, we talk about facts and so forth, but you also have to have room for your gut to fall into that. If you've got a bad read, if something's not right, being able to trust that instinct, even if it's not, and sometimes you can't wait for, the data tape to come out to show that you were right. You have to roll with that gut feeling. So.
Amazing.
I just wonder how many people are trusting their gut, their instinct and intuition, but fail to reflect to see how accurate that truly is. Like you are, right? It's like, oh, I thought this, but maybe my assumptions weren't accurate. So many people probably think they're making the best decisions because they never go and reassess how effective that decision ultimately was. You are. That's a big difference.
Thanks. I even there, I think you have to be careful with too much reflection. It's kind of like, the stock market analogy, if you keep track of like, gosh, I should have held on to that stock, or why did I sell, you'll beat yourself up, but I think a healthy amount of reflection on that's important, Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, not coming a prisoner of your past, don't beat yourself up. That's where the compassion comes in. You're not always going to get it perfect, right? And that's okay. We're not meant to be perfect. And I forget what guest shared it, Ty, but his quote always stuck with me is, perfection is exhausting, right? It's energy draining. And here we are thinking that it's saving us all this energy and time. We've convinced ourselves that it is, but even seeking out perfection in and of itself is an energy draining exercise.
Yes,
I think that was me,
absolutely.
Kevin, because it makes me super exhausted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does.
Oh
It
Yeah,
does.
man.
I definitely don't get up every morning feeling like I'm gonna be perfect that day. That's for sure. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think humility gets you through life pretty well, just otherwise you're gonna beat yourself up too much and who knows, maybe that's what makes people uncomfortable, kind of being introspective. If you're coming at it from that you've got to be perfect, it's kind of hard to take an inward look and admit that you aren't. I think just keeping that humility is important. So
Absolutely. I feel so many people turn to other things to not reflect. I mean, we're surrounded by distractions. I can sink myself onto social media. I could watch a sports event. I could listen to music, right? Really, I mean, I don't think we're sitting in silence enough, right, with ourselves, taking
right.
that time out to give our opportunity to really gain that inner perspective, because we're just surrounded by so many distractions telling us not to. Maybe that's the devil working, right? I think that's the ultimate goal, right? Never recognize what you're good at, and yeah. So to
Well,
know
I
Sam on a
got a
deeper
selfish
level,
question for me and you, Kevin. So Sam,
yeah.
me and Kevin are fairly new fathers right now.
Okay.
Got a 3-year old, I got a 1-year old. How the heck do you cut it off when you get home? Like burning from work. Like when you get home
Yeah.
from work, how the heck do you not think about this stuff when you're a high performer, when you're in charge of people, when you're dealing with other people's problems, when you're motivating other people?
Yeah.
All the dang things. Give us some, like, go to the wisdom well on us, man. What do you got for us there?
I wish I could offer something solid there. I mean, I haven't always been good at it. I mean, I did the obvious things, like I made sure I was always there for every single, hockey game, my ice hockey game my son played. One time I was late, the flight got delayed to get home in time for the game, and it was the one time he broke his leg, and I felt terrible about it. But
Oh
I
my
mean, like there's
God.
those things where it's just like, hey, I'm going to be present for these things, but then are you really present? Because if you were to ask my kids, they'd say, well, Dad, you were there, but you were on your phone, or I asked you the same
Yeah.
question 3 times and you didn't answer me. And, so, I think it's just, there's definitely things that, um, I'm kind of hard on myself with that stuff. My kids are well adjusted and, we've got a really great family structure, but just like I'm kind of hard on myself at work, I'm 3 times harder on myself at home. But, my daughter, she was the firstborn, she was colicky and she had a really hard time sleeping. And, one thing I can say is that for like the first year of her life, as soon as I got home from work, my wife was worn out from dealing with her all day and trying to get adjusted to being a mom and all that stuff. And I'm pretty proud of myself that I stayed up with her all night, and then went back to work the next day. And now I still remember just kind of holding her in my arms, after work doing that, so I guess a long way of saying I'm probably my own worst critic when it comes to family, because that's the one part that I really would like to be perfect at. And but wish I had some better advice for you, but just try your hardest, be
Hey,
present,
that's
Yeah.
some great advice. I think the being present, right, is like putting everything away, putting it down. I mean, I had to go as far as Sam of not having work email on my phone, right? I had some of these things I got to save myself from myself. But I love how
Yeah.
you said it, because I see it very similarly. I'm hard on myself professionally, but 3 times as hard personally. It's like, man, if I step up on that side, it does feel life changing, right? Some of the things that we do within the day, I'm not saving lives, right? I'm hopefully helping to improve them. But yeah, I love how you put that, because yeah, that's probably where I'm my hardest and toughest critic, and beat myself up the most, as well, because it's like, man, I really should have been there, and why didn't I make the time? Man, my time management skills are poor. Maybe I have to work on those. All those things start racing through your head.
Yeah.
If one question I got for you, because you seem like you're very, very self-centered, right? You know who you are. You're selfish, but in the right ways, in the right areas. How is there one book that you wish that everybody would read or could read? Is there one book that you would recommend that everybody pick up to really learn from, or something that spoke to your soul?
Gosh, there's been a whole bunch of books that are great. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, so Leaders Eat Last, and really kind of focusing on your why.
Hey, that why book could have been a lot shorter without that same
could have been a
paragraph
lot
they
shorter.
repeat.
Yeah.
Holy hell, Sam! That was my only complaint with the book. I told Tyler, I was like, if he just took out this one paragraph, that book could have been 100 pages less. But I guess he just wanted to drill home that point.
Yeah. It's funny with so many of those books, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like the majority of them, like the first 5 chapters, and then like the second 5 chapters are all like just a giant appendix or something.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
I agree. That was my only. I was like, this is good. A lot of it I thought was common sense, right? A lot of the things that you and I but hearing somebody else say it, I have found through reading validates it. It's a lot of the things that we haven't verbalized or told anybody else, but you read it in a book and it's like, holy shit, I'm not crazy, right? And here's somebody else that's saying the same exact thing. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And the great thing with Simon Sinek and a lot of those people, but Simon, we refer to a lot here. He's got some good TED Talks, so then you learn those points and and then it's easy to kind of pull up one of his TED Talks and be able to they get people's emotions going in a good way, get people fired up in the right way. So we play some of those things through our leadership groups and so forth.
Some of those affirmations are powerful, that some of those words just, they matter,
Definitely.
Ty, I know we got 1 minute left. Is there any other question? Otherwise, I think this was a fantastic conversation, Sam. I just want to say
I love the natural, organic ones, man. This has been fun, Sam. This has been fun.
Right, thank you. It's been a lot of fun for me too. Yeah. You guys were a lot of fun today. I just met you literally, now and aside from the emails, and it felt very natural, and thanks for having me on.